Cool. I don't know if you guys followed the first flight of the new 777X. There was a stream on Boeing website. Apparently it was cancelled a couple of times, and then on the third time lucky, they did actually manage to go and to the test flight, the first test flight. So first time the aircraft was flying, which was quite exciting, obviously. The flight test was a little bit of a problem with the weather, because around like Seattle it was quite cloudy, a little bit of rain, but mostly also like a southerly wind, from what I understand from Everett. They couldn't take off in a southerly direction to use the headwind. The wind was quite strong, so for a couple of days they couldn't take off with the tailwind. The tailwind was too strong for the flight test. From what I understand, they need to take off to the north to remain clear of populated areas and things like that. So I think on the second day in particular, at some point the wind was gusting 25-30 knots, so obviously they couldn't take off with that tailwind component. So it got delayed a little bit, but eventually on the third day there was still a little bit of a tailwind, but I don't think it was that strong. I think it was less than 10 knots, which from what I understand that's what they needed for the test. So yeah, it seemed to have gone quite well. Everybody seemed to be quite happy. So the aircraft is on the right track, and it's scheduled now for 2021 at some point. I'm not really sure exactly when, but yeah, for 2021. So yeah, Clemenza, I think it's the wingspan already is wider than the current 300, and yeah, I think it's a little bit bigger. Yeah. Weight-wise, actually, I think because of the composite material, weight-wise, I'm not sure if it's heavier or lighter than the current 777-300. I'm not sure. I don't have all the data for the new aircraft. What I heard is that actually the engines are less powerful than the G90 115, I think it is. But the current G19 engines, yeah, G90 115, yeah, the new engines are actually less powerful. So, but I think it's because they're due to be more economical, and possibly also because the aircraft is a little bit lighter. So, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it has folding wing tips. Yeah, so I guess it will be part of the before takeoff checklist as we enter the runway to unfold the wings. And then from what I understand, I mean, as I said, I don't have much information about the aircraft, to be honest, but from what I understand, the wings will automatically fold at the end of the landing, basically when the speed is like reducing to taxi speed. I think the wings will automatically fold, maybe on the rollout at like 40 knots or 30 knots, something like that. The wings will automatically retract, which the wingtips, which will be good. Obviously the folding wingtips is to keep the current width of the 777. So the current wingspan at the moment is about 65 meters, which kind of allows the aircraft to go in a lot of airports. If the wingspan is wider, then there's a problem with some of the airports around the world. With the 380, a lot of airports are now like, because the 380 has a wider wingspan, a lot of airports are configured for the 380, so the new 777 wouldn't be a problem in these airports, but and a lot of other airports, then the 380 cannot really go. So the new 777 couldn't go either, and therefore that's why they have the folding wingtips. And even like when you talk about a 380, even the airports which are approved and configured for the 380, the 380 still has a lot of restrictions, you know, because it's such a big aircraft and with such a large wingspan, that for example you can sometimes have like two traffic, like a 380 and another aircraft crossing each other on parallel taxiways and all that stuff. There's a lot of restrictions. So I guess with the 777 and the folded wingtips, then those restrictions don't apply. The 777 is currently categorized as a Category E aircraft for airports. So that's like aircraft with a wingspan of 65 meters. The 380, for example, I'm not really sure what the wingspan is, but it's obviously wider, and it's categorized as F. So Category F aircraft are like obviously like the 380 has a lot of restrictions. Category E, most airports in the world can accept those aircraft. Yeah, exactly. You know, it doesn't need because it's got like basically bigger wings and therefore more lift. Might not need the engines. The engines are, from what I understand, the engines are definitely not as powerful as the current one, the G90 115. But obviously, because also it's trying to be economical. And I suspect a bit like the 787 that the weight of the aircraft won't be that heavy. I mean, at the moment, the 300ER, above all for the kind of long flight configuration, the takeoff weight can be up to 351,534, I think. Whereas I think this one will probably be much less. I was surprised with the 787 weight. I mean, the 787 is quite a big aircraft, and the weight is only about 250 or tons or something like that. It's relatively light. They saved a lot of weight, and therefore like it's very economical as well for the fuel. So I suspect that the new 777 will be like this as well. Due to the composite material and all that stuff. I do believe it will be a little bit lighter. So lighter, like less powerful engines, but very economical engines. Then obviously for the fuel consumption and also for the environment, in a sense, it will be better. Alright, so I'm doing good progress. Not really sure what all these airports are. The database gives us all these airports. The airports we get on the real aircraft, I mean, obviously that's airline dependent. You know, everybody does it, you know, a certain way. But the way we do it is that in the FMC we only have the airports we are capable of. We're capable to fly to, if you see what I mean. We'll get like the main airports and the airports we've got like agreement with, in case we have to divert or something. So all the smaller airports or the kind of secondary airports, even if they have a long runway, wouldn't really appear in the database here. And when you look at the navigation display, you wouldn't get all those airports displayed. Even as I said, if they have like a long runway or anything like that, it's only really the main airports. Because I mean, you can't really divert like a 777 anywhere as well. Obviously you need the airport facilities like long runway, the instrument approaches, but also you need all the ground logistics around it. You know, you need like to be capable to have 400 passengers, you know, in an airport, and all the ground facilities and all that stuff. So you can't really go anywhere you want. You know, you need. There's a lot of things to consider for like a 777. So according to the EFB, that's VOR here called Charleston, which is probably somewhere. That's Charlotte up there. So yeah, Carolina really. So not very far now. Landing 1936 and it is now 1824. So yeah, just about an hour away, which is good. As I said, like a while ago on the stream here today, I'm trying to use the simulation here as if I was like in the real aircraft, and kind of point out things. You know, if I had somebody in the flight deck with me, which of course is not possible, but and just like point out, you know, things as I go along, and what the thought process is. You know. I can't really do that in the real aircraft, film and talk and all that stuff. I mean, even if it was just recording, but we're not really supposed to do that, and I wouldn't really fancy trying to do all that stuff. But yeah, I do find it like quite interesting, you know, to kind of explain all the different little things, and kind of like share what the thought process is. Yeah, that's the, you know, Clement said that's the type of thing, you know, that I think is kind of worth, you know, having a chat about, and kind of finding out things as we go along. So yeah, I know, like I know you guys are quite into, you know, the simulation, and know a lot of stuff already, which sometimes I'm amazed about. So you know, when I use maybe some technical terms, or explaining a little bit into detail some of the stuff, I mean, I know that for some of you it does make sense, because you're quite familiar with the aircraft and the systems and how things work generally. So, but if I can add a little bit of value to it, then it's all the better, really. Yeah, the simulators actually are quite useful, you know, for aviation in general. The one thing I would say about flying in real and then flying in simulators like this, above all when you do the PPL, is to try not to get too fixated on the instruments when you fly the real aircraft, VFR for example. Because like people who fly on the desktop simulations have a tendency to kind of look at the instruments a little bit too much. When you fly VFR, you're not really supposed to look down in the flight deck, in the cockpit, to look at the instrument. You're supposed to look outside. Obviously, you need to cross-check that you're keeping your altitude, your speed is kind of reasonable and all these things, but when you fly VFR, you're supposed to look outside. So yeah, the tendency of people flying desktop simulations, as I said, is to look a little bit too much at the instruments, which is a little bit counterproductive in a way. But otherwise, yeah, it's a good tool. What I like about the simulator as well is that it kind of like shows you places. There's a lot of airports I don't regularly fly to, or never fly to in real, that I can fly to in the simulator, and it kind of shows me a little bit how it looks around the airport. And if I've never flown to a place and I fly in the simulator and then I go there in real for the first time, I do kind of like find a little bit of like familiarity, you know, in the area of the airport. If there's a bit of mountainous terrain around, if it's, for example, the airport is surrounded by yeah, by mountains, or if it's sitting on the edge of a bay or something. When you fly in the simulator and then you fly in real, it kind of looks a little bit the same, you know. It kind of gives you a feel for the place, which I quite like, actually. Yeah, that was quite interesting. That crosswind, as I said, it was kind of east of Canada, like picking up the jet stream. Unfortunately, it was not exactly on the tail. It was maybe kind of 45 degree off the side, and yeah, only lasted for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It didn't last for long. Just at the time to take the photograph, because I had like my phone in my pocket. Just like took the phone out quickly. I could see the wind increase. I went up to the maximum of 194, I think it was, and then like slowly died down after that. So we were probably just like in the core of the jet stream for like yeah, for a couple of minutes. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Such strong winds, and actually the conditions at that time were like relatively smooth. Actually, also like you are like in almost 200 knot wind, and there was hardly any turbulence. It was very smooth. Very often, actually, it's when the wind then either like the wind speed increases or decreases that the turbulence happens, because it's like there's like um, different like layers, if you want, in the wind, and when you transition from like one layer to the other, that's maybe when it's turbulent. But when you're like in the core of the stream and the wind is stable, then it's usually very smooth. Turbulence in general is not very pleasant, you know. I'm not a big fan of turbulence, I have to say, but I mean, the aircraft are coping usually quite well, but I'm not a big fan of turbulence, I have to say, even after all this time and stuff. Yeah, it's not pleasant. 3-1 right is actually nice, because you have Manhattan in the background, which is really nice approach. The wind is supposed to keep turning towards the northwest, so maybe we'll go for 3-1 right. Anyway, as I said, there's no ATC, there's nothing. 2967 is the QNH, so that's nice to know. So we'll go back to the simulator. 2967. Oops. QNH altimeter setting is quite low, actually. So 2967 is preset. So there's nothing on the recall. There are no notes on the descent page. There's no little Mac functions. No tricks today. So we're gonna go into departure arrival. Select the JFK arrival. It's the ILS 3-1 right. It's the Cameron 4 arrival. The transition, I don't think we actually use the cathode transition. So just to double check, we look at the navigation display. Once again, go to plan mode here on the FS. Rotate the knob to plan, and then go to the legs page to see all the waypoints one after the other. So from Sierra India Echo, we go to Cameron, and then from Cameron there's actually a discontinuity that takes us to Moldy. So actually we'll just simplify the whole thing and link Cameron here to Moldy for the Alice 31 right. That's the most direct route. I'm not really sure what sort of radar vectors or route they would give you, but here, just to make it simple, we'll just link the two together and to get rid of the discontinuity. So then we can execute that, and if we go on a wider range, you can see from Cameron we're on a very wide base leg for 31 right. So that all looks good. So I'll close that, go back to the map mode here, and I close this as well. Actually, no, I'll leave it open. I'll look at the EFB. So if we go on the arrival thing, we can select on the JFK arrival, select the star, 31 right, which has a display threshold, and it's the Cameron 4. So on the chart here, well, it's not really the chart, but more the EFB. We go from Sea Isle, which is Sierra India Echo. We go to Uggs, which is no, first to Button. Oh, it's here, it's hidden with all the airports. So Button, Uggs, then to Pansy. That's correct. And then we go to Cars and to Cameron. So that's why we have in the FMC. So that's good. We have all that in the FMC, and then we go directly to Malde. And then I'll go back to the Aivlasoft EFB, look at the approach. We'll choose the ILS 31 right, we have Malde, and cathode we don't really need. And then I'll activate that. So I got Malde, Zulab, and pretty much the runway. So if we go back to the simulator, we got Malde, Zulab, and the runway. So that's all correct. And the missed approach is to Canarsie, which is famous for the approach on the other side on 1-3 left. And then going to Charlie Oscar Lima, which is what is it called already? Cold Snake here. So that's the one. Cool. So that all makes sense. What I'll do in here is I'll reduce the speed at Malde because it's about 10 miles out, so 240 knots is a little bit too much, so we can put 170 for example. Just to inform the FMC a little bit of what the best speed is really. Then what we'll do is minimums. I think it's about 210. I don't have the actual charts with me here, so I'll just use what the EFB is giving me. So we'll assume it's about 210 for the VREF. We'll work out something with the VRF, so we'll have a look at from the index here at the performance page. The zero fuel weight is 233.7, and then if we so we'll keep that in mind, and then we'll look at the progress page. It's telling us the landing fuel is going to be 7.8, so if we add zero fuel weight to the expected fuel on landing, It's gonna be roughly 8 tons on landing, so 233.7 plus 8 is 241.7, so 241.5 roughly, which was more or less what was expected on the flight plan, so makes sense. So we'll type 241.5 and set it in the gross weight here. Replaces the current gross weight, and that's giving us for flap 30 147. So we'll select on the R3 key here. It's setting flap 30 147 in the scratch pad, and set it in the flap speed here, and the R4 key here section. And that's our VRF set. That's pretty much it for the auto brake. We'll go 3. And we've got MCP, reset MCP altitude message in the FMC, so yeah, the CAN-RC approach is quite challenging. Nowadays they've got all sorts of RNAV layouts that kind of makes the whole thing a little bit easier, because you fly LNAV, VNAV, and the autopilot flies the whole approach by itself and very nicely. It's very accurate and everything. But if you have to fly the CAN-RC approach the old way, then it is quite challenging indeed. It's very difficult. And down we go. So let me quickly brief that dude. He said it was 210. Up 30, auto brake 3. We keep the APU, we keep the transponder. Weather and terrain, so I'm not gonna play the tape, but I'm gonna call him for the descent checklist. Descent checklist.
Stand by.
So FS2 crew is still active in the background, which is good after like a 2-hour flight.
Descent checklist. Recall. Checked. Notes.
Checked. Checked. Checked.
Auto brake level 3. Landing data.
VRF is 147, minimums 210 feet.
VREF 147. Minimums 210 feet. Approach briefing.
Completed.
Descent checklist complete.
Seatbelt sign on.
Seatbelt signs coming on.
Yeah, relatively cloudy now. It's always an amazing moment when you are about to enter the cloud cover like this. If for any reason at that stage the vertical speed, you know, the rate of descent is not too steep, and yeah, you can kind of like what we say, like surf the cloud, because you kind of slowly get close to the cloud cover and stay just on top of the cloud cover for like maybe 10 seconds or so, and you kind of just fly over the, you know, the top of the cloud. It's quite fun. So far so good. Next step is 10,000 feet. I think first the crew, well, the first officer will call 10,000 feet, and we'll basically set the landing lights and the runway turn-off lights to the on position. We are in my airline, we set all the lights on, regardless of whether they are like in the landing, in the nose landing gear or not. We set all the lights. So basically, the left nose and right landing lights come on, and the left and right runway turn off, and also the taxi light, which is actually situated on the nose landing gear. So when you are 10,000 feet and the gear is still in. Doesn't make much sense, but at least you know that all the lights are on. Actually, if I remember my theory, which sometimes is not top notch, even if you switch on the, for example, the taxi light or the landing nose light, and the gear is retracted, the light is actually off, and the light will only come on when the gear comes down. So it's not as if you use the light bulb for nothing, because it doesn't work when the gear is retracted. Only comes on when the gear is down, I think, as far as I'm aware. I might be wrong on that one. I'll need to check actually. So yeah, approaching 10,000 feet. So the FMC has scheduled speed reduction to 240 knots. You don't have to do 240 knots. You can actually do 250 below 10,000 feet. But yeah, it's acceptable to kind of come back to 240 anyway. So that's the default value in the FMC, and that's what the aircraft is giving us as well. But you can amend it to 250 if you wish. So yeah, so descending to 7,000 feet, approaching Cameron, which is kind of southwest of New York. You see, that's a little bit what I was saying earlier on about surfing the cloud. The rate of descent at the moment has reduced to about 700 feet per minute, so we're not descending very fast. We're just on the top of the cloud cover, which is quite nice actually. You see, that's what I was saying, the left and right landing light, and
cabin
left
crew prepare
and right,
for landing.
Turn off lights as well. A few airlines would yeah, indeed come on the PA, the pilot monitoring, so not necessarily the first officer, because obviously first officer or captain is more like a rank, but when we fly we talk more about like the pilot function. So pilot flying, the guy flying the aircraft obviously and manipulating the controls, and the pilot monitoring was kind of, as the word says, monitoring the flight, making sure that the pilot flying is doing a good job. Also pilot monitoring, who does the radio and all that stuff. And yeah, in that case, the pilot monitoring at 10,000 feet would come on the PA and give notification to the crew to prepare for landing. So 10,000 feet usually 10,000 feet usually equates to about 10 minutes to go, so it's a good that's a good point in the descent to give the 10 minutes to the crew. So I go down now to 5,000 feet, as I said, on that wide base leg for 301 right. Currently over the ocean, I believe. Yeah. Up here the wind is 296, so it's maybe more favoring runway 31, but obviously as we're gonna come down, the wind might turn a little bit. It's not gonna remain at 296 all the way down. And while we're chatting, approach checklist.
Approach checklist. Altimeters.
2967 set.
2967. Approach checklist complete.
Yeah, you just came back for a sterile cockpit indeed, yeah. Alright, we can go down to 3,000 feet, which is the platform altitude here at Malde. A little bit in the soup at the moment. It's alright. We're still getting those drag required message. So to make Life easy. Now we're gonna go fly level change. Now we've got hold and fly level change speed. And we're gonna come back towards the up speed. So obviously the up speed always changes in relation to the weight of the aircraft. At the moment we are about 242 tons, almost just under 242 tons. So for that weight, the up speed is 227. If the aircraft was, let's say, 220 tons, then the up speed will be 220 knots. So when I refer to the up speed, it's not a set value. The value changes all the time according to the weight of the aircraft. Flaps 1.
Speed check, flaps 1.
And the flap 1 speed also would vary according to the weight, and so on and so forth for the other speeds. Hey Batesy, how you doing? Flaps 5.
Speed check, flaps 5.
Right, so I hope the LNAV is gonna do a better job than the other day in Zurich, where I kind of overshot the runway center line. I mean, I have reduced the speed, and the other day I had reduced the speed as well, but the LNAV kind of totally overshot the other day. It does look like it's turning a little bit before the mold
1,000 feet to level off.
So we'll see how it works. It looks like we're doing well on the vertical profile, so we'll try to reduce the vertical speed a little bit. Flaps 15.
Speed check, flaps 15.
I'll reduce the speed a little bit more to try to make the turn as smoothly as I can. It looks like it's turning a little bit before, so hopefully it's gonna do a good job. Let's see. Yeah, no, the heading is corrected for wind. So as you can see at the moment, the track here on the track line is 035, as it's currently bugged, but the heading is 028. So because the wind is coming from the left, then with the heading you put the nose a little bit into the wind to keep the track. So the heading is kind of wind corrected, if that makes sense, no? Cabin is ready, so we got out. I'm flying very slowly, but here in New York they would make you fly like crazy. So the ILS sensing is correct to the right of the aircraft, just below the glide slope. Should be 3,000 feet exactly at Mulder. So we'll arm the approach mode. We've got localizer, glide slope armed. Let's see how it works out. But does it make sense? So therefore, at the moment, as I said, with the track and the heading, the track is 035, that's the line you're flying over the ground. And the heading is 029, which is adjusted for the crosswind at the moment. At the moment, the autopilot doesn't fly track or mode, because actually it flies a track because it flies the magenta line, which is actually like a track, and the LNAV function. And now we have intercepted the localizer, so the autopilot is gonna fly the localizer. And the glide slope as well now, exactly at Molde. Gear down.
Gear down.
Flaps 20.
Speed check flaps 20.
Does it make sense? And now the gear is down.
Gear down.
Flaps 30.
Speed check flaps 30.
2500.
Cabin crew, take your seats.
And the missed approach altitude is set. 4,000 feet. Landing checklist.
Landing checklist. Landing checklist complete.
Checklist complete. Cabin crew, take your seats. That must be something you've heard quite a few times, haven't you? Oh, the scenery is gonna struggle with this computer. It's the is it Airlines or whatever JFK scenery, but I'm not sure how it's gonna look. I think it might struggle a little bit with the frames and the actual graphics. Let's see how it goes. Landing checklist complete. Crew seated. We're good to go. Got flight director. For the moment, it doesn't look like there's a runway ahead of me. So, not really sure how this is gonna work out. Where's the runway? The scenery is very blurry. Uh-oh. Oh, before landing, they don't tell you to sit down. I mean, and the airlines I've worked before. There's some sort of like cabin crew,
Approach stable.
like seats for landing or whatever, or prepare or
1000.
or get ready for landing or whatever the call is. But yeah, we have like a PA for the crew, like around maybe, I don't know, 2,000 feet or whatever, to sit the crew down. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a runway ahead of me. The scenery it looks a little bit blurry. I've got an excuse for a bad landing.
1, right.
But we can see Manhattan in the background, some of the high rise in the background, which is very good. Now the frames is gonna be brought to a standstill almost, but it's doing well. So far so good.
500.
We got a bit of a crosswind. I think the crosswind would have been the same regardless of to left or right. Here it's difficult to do a textbook crosswind landing on this thing. On top of that, I don't have the pedals, so
Plus.
Approaching minimums.
check.
Minimums.
Minimums.
Landing.
Checked.
100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Speed brakes up. Reversers normal.
Mine.
60 knots.
Manual braking.
Check.
Yeah, here we are, New York JFK. Runway 31 right.